So a newborn baby is born with billions of neurons, and this is a time period of maximum plasticity in the brain. So early identification and early treatment is crucial for children that have hearing loss. And we now have the tools to identify a child early in life and to treat them. So neuroplasticity is the brain's availability and the malleability to grow, develop, and alter structure as a function of external stimulation. So an infant is born with billions of neurons, and based on the experiences, it prunes and it makes connections with these neurons. So babies born deaf today have an incredible possibility to achieve higher levels of spoken language, reading skills, and academic achievement than ever before because of the cochlear implant and advanced hearing aid technology, in addition to a lot of speech and language therapy. Hearing is the most effective way to teach spoken language, reading, and cognitive skills. If a child or an infant can't hear, they're never going to learn language. If they don't learn language well, they're going to have trouble reading. If they have trouble reading, they're going to have trouble in school. So auditory brain access is available to babies with profound deafness, and these negative developmental outcomes, we can now move past them. Infants acquire their native languages by listening, and we start life prepared to speak. So at birth, an infant prefers his or her mother's speech and the songs and stories heard before birth. This is because infants are born with 20 weeks of listening experience. The cochlea is formed and functional by the 5th month of gestation, and there's a great deal of sound available to the fetus in utero. So newborns born with hearing loss are already at a disadvantage because they haven't had those 4 months with sound exposure. In the first 6 months of life, babies can discriminate many speech sounds, even those that aren't heard in their home language. But within a few months, the brain becomes a more efficient analyzer of speech, and by the end of the first year, there's a functional reorganization of the brain, and it's able to distinguish phonemes heard to its specific language daily. So there are a number of sounds in India, in some of those languages that we can't hear, but a newborn baby would be able to distinguish those differences. Or in Asian languages, there isn't a distinction between an R and an L. So people born in Japan that have never been exposed to English at an early age aren't going to hear an R and an L. And because they can't process it because their brain never made those connections, they're always going to experience some degree of confusion in words like rake versus lake. So language exposure at an early age is just so important when the brain is making these connections. So it's critical for spoken language. And if you want to have a bilingual or a multilingual child, exposing them to those different languages early on is the best thing to do so that the brain can hold on to the differences in the sounds and not prune them away. There was a longitudinal study of person-spoken words heard by children from birth to 4 years, and the average number of words per house addressed to children by parents in professional families was 2,100, in working class families 1,200, and in welfare families 600. The extra talk of the parents in professional families and that of the most talkative parents in working class families had more varied vocabulary, complex ideas, subtle guidance, and positive feedback, which are all very important for cognitive development. Parents who talk a lot or a little end up with a 3-year-old that talks a lot or a little. And the first 3 years of language experience sets the trajectory for vocabulary growth the foundations of analytical and symbolic competencies and makes a lasting difference. Remember, you need good language skills to be a good reader. So literacy and infants and children require about 20,000 hours of spoken language in their first 5 years of life to create the neural infrastructure for literacy. And this has significant implications for children with hearing loss.